What up, YouTube? Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sherry. Thank you so much for being here today. I have not been very active on this channel, and I had all these plans, and I still have all these plans for this channel. I told you guys my heart behind it a long time ago in the introduction. Aside from the church chats, that's all there's been. And I really enjoy doing those, and I hope those are beneficial for somebody. But I have a lot of things that I want to share, and the reason I chose to do this today is because I've had a pretty rough last month and a half with my health. And so in a nutshell, this is going to be the first part of my experience with fibromyalgia and chronic illness. I made a little outline because I want to kind of stay on track, so you don't have to just sit here and stare at me and only me doing nothing or just talking. I'm going to go ahead and put on some makeup while I talk to you guys, just because I'm going to film some other videos after this, and I might as well be doing something while I'm talking to you. So this video isn't like an hour long. I'm going to just go ahead and start off with part 1. There will be a part 2 and potentially a part 3, depending on how much I can get into these videos to begin with. But I just want to kind of start at the beginning with my health in general and kind of tell you about how I came to be diagnosed and where I've been since then, that kind of thing today. There's a lot of things involved that I'll get into later, but today I'm just going to kind of tell you how I got from point A to point B, which is now. So I made a little list here of things that I wanted to discuss. So I'm just going to kind of read over the outline to you just so you know where we're beginning and where we're headed. I wanted to start off with puberty, anemia, and hormonal issues, and I'll just kind of give you an overview and then go into each little detail. My experience with a diagnosis of endometriosis, hemorrhaging pelvic pain, and fertility when I was in my early 20s, whenever I was married the first time. Then my first years of teaching in Colorado, I got mononucleosis and also had some other things happen there along with my weight loss surgery. I want to talk to you about symptoms, about my diagnosis, about the meds that I'm on, about my experience with a rheumatologist in pain management. And later on, after I've gotten all this out to you, I kind of want to share a day in the life of somebody that has fibro or chronic illness or an autoimmune disease of some kind. And I also want to do a video about the emotional, mental, spiritual impact of having chronic illness. I've said this so many times to so many people, and I'll say it to you. Anyone, I know this is true for me, and I would imagine it's true for anybody who experiences chronic illness, particularly long term. We don't want pity from people. We don't want people to feel sorry for us, but we do want to be understood, and we do want people to understand what we go through on a daily basis. Just for the sake of having an explanation or an understanding of why we make plans with you and we cancel. You don't hear from us for 2 or 3 days because we're in bed and we can't move, or we have 14 doctor's appointments and we're so tired just from the process of going through all that, going out of town to a specialist and going here for a test and going here for pain management and going here. I mean, I'm starting down a rabbit hole that I'll address later, but we want people to understand what that's like and how some people just get up and go to work, take a shower, eat breakfast, and go to work. It's not like that for somebody who has a chronic pain illness. There's a lot that goes into just being able to move every morning. And so I just want to talk to you about some of those things. Again, to reiterate, this is not for pity. This is for understanding, for other people's education, and in the least that maybe you will understand somebody a little bit better who is dealing with chronic illness, and hopefully have some empathy and compassion for that person in ways that maybe you didn't before. And also for those of you who are caretakers for people who are chronically ill, hopefully just some camaraderie and knowing that someone else understands and can relate with what you're dealing with on a daily basis and what you go through. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time telling you what I'm putting on my face. I'm just going to do it. So I'm not going to go all the way back to whenever I was a baby and start from there. There's no need for me to go that far back. But I will say that I was a healthy baby I didn't have a lot of sickness. I didn't have colic or any, of the regular baby stuff. I was healthy. But the first time I had any kind of health issues was whenever I was in middle school and I was going through puberty. Prior to that, I was super healthy, very athletic. I was, as I've told you as many times, I was raised at a ballpark. My dad was a college baseball coach, and that's where I lived. And so I was the baby sister of 2 older brothers. And so I was super athletic, rough and tumble kind of tomboy. And spent most of my time outside riding bikes, playing sports. I liked to go to dance classes, hang out with my friends. I was very active, and there really wasn't anything that kept me from experiencing life to the fullest. I was fully healthy. I slept well, I ate well, I did everything a normal kid does. And but the first time I ever had a health issue was whenever I went into puberty, basically. Before I even had my very first period, I had like 2 or 3 weeks of discomfort, and I didn't really know what was wrong with me. My mom kept saying, you're that age, it's getting ready to happen, Sherry. And I was like a tomboy, so totally in denial that that was even possible and wasn't about to accept it. I was that girl who didn't want to turn into a woman. I was that girl. But anyways, when it did happen, it was very painful, and I missed some school. And just right from the beginning, as soon as some hormonal changes started happening in my body just kind of went wackadoodle. I, in essence, had a period that wouldn't stop, and I refused to go to a gynecologist because I was a little girl. I was scared to death. I didn't want some man touching me. I didn't want anything to do with it. And I remember it says specifically because it was a snow day, and my mom, I was so excited I didn't have to go to school. And my mom came in the room and said, you need to get dressed because we're going to the gynecologist. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I went on a straight out flip out. I agreed to go because she told me that they would not do a pelvic exam. She was concerned because I was having a period that wouldn't stop. And she wanted to find out what our options were. And so whenever we went into the room with the nurse, she pulled up one of those trays that has the speculum and all the instruments on it, and said, in a paper gown, and said, I need you to get dressed and leave, your clothes off from the waist down. And then she left the room. And my mom, I just burst into tears and flipped smooth out and told my mom, I hate you. I can't believe that you did this to me. You tricked me. You did this on purpose. You told me they weren't going to do this, and they're doing this. And she's like, no, Sherry, they told me that they wouldn't do this. And I was full on hysterical because I was not, obviously I was a virgin. I had never even been unclothed in any kind of way in front of a man. Let me just tell you, I was on a smooth flip out. So after I finished freaking out, my mom went and talked to the doctor, and he was super sweet. He ended up being my daughter's gynecologist and obstetrician for I think both of her babies. But anyways, he told my mom that he didn't want my first experience with a gynecologist to be a traumatic experience. And so he wasn't going to give me a pelvic exam. And so she came and got me, and I was still doing the thing because I mean, when I say flip out, I mean flip out. And so anyways, he decided to give me 3 birth control pills and to stop it. And if that didn't stop it, there would be other options, but that's what he did to stop it. All of that to say, for me having a period that lasted that long, I got super anemic. And I couldn't take iron pills because they would make me throw up. So they were trying to treat the anemia, but the iron was making me throw up, and so I just couldn't take it. I just didn't take it. And at that point I was young and healthy, and they figured I would bounce back eventually. But over time, my dad would have to come in the room in the morning and pull the blanket off of me and physically get me out of bed because I was so lethargic and tired and zoned out that I would sleep through my alarm for hours, and I would refuse to get out of bed. And as soon as I got home from school, I would have a snack and I would go right back to sleep on the couch or wherever, and then I would get up and have dinner and do my homework, and then I would go right back to bed. So anytime I wasn't eating or in school, I was asleep. And so that was my first experience with anemia, and I've had many situations with anemia over the years, and I'll kind of talk about each one of those. So the birth control worked, and they decided to actually put me on birth control to try to regulate my cycle and to try to keep that from happening again. And so fast forward to many years later, 5, 6, 7 years later, where I was married and we were trying to have a child. At that point, I was having severe pelvic pain and very irregular periods. Things, I wasn't ovulating. I wouldn't have periods for months, and then I would have one that didn't want to stop. All the same business. And so I started seeing a doctor in Oklahoma City who said that he thought I had endometriosis because of the pelvic pain, because of the infertility, and he opted to do an exploratory surgery. Well, whenever he did the surgery, he said he did find endometrial tissue outside of the uterus, which means, anytime my explanation or his explanation to me was that if any endometrial tissue, which is the tissue that's inside the uterus that eventually becomes the placenta that the baby grows into, and sorry any nurses if I'm wrong, but this is what I was told and this was my understanding. And so he diagnosed me with endometriosis and started treating me for it. Different injections. At age 28, they put me into medicinal menopause. I can't even remember the name of the drug. All I know is like a $3,000 injection that I took, I think for 3 months, until I turned into a crazy person and I had to go off of it. But it basically took all the estrogen out of my body, because the explanation to me was that estrogen was what fed the endometriosis, and to get the endometriosis to go away, I needed to A, get pregnant, or B, go into menopause. Well, we tried to get pregnant and that didn't work, and we could not get pregnant even with, ovulation detection, all that jazz, because later on I found out I just wasn't ovulating. But it was super frustrating because we were trying to have a baby. I was very sick and much in pain, in such bad pelvic pain that there were days that I couldn't stand up straight, and there were a lot of days that I couldn't get out of bed. And all they were treating it with was crazy stuff that was making my body go nuts, because I was, nobody goes into menopause at age 28, and they were forcing it to happen. And so it was very traumatic to my body, and I was so desperate to be out of pain that I was willing to try anything that this guy suggested, because I thought he had my best interest at heart. Later on, at age 38, I insisted on a hysterectomy. Whenever I had the hysterectomy, I was sure that they would find my organs glued together with endometriosis, just based on the amount of pelvic pain I was having. And when they removed the organs, which they removed my uterus and my kidneys, my uterus and my ovaries, they found that my organs were completely, perfectly healthy, not a single thing wrong with them, no fibroids, no endometriosis, no nothing. They took out completely healthy organs. So there was no explanation for the infertility, there was no explanation for the pain. And so that was upsetting to me, because I felt like I was giving, even though I was 38 and my current husband and I had decided that we weren't going to have children, it was still really devastating to me to give up my ability to have children, just because I had wanted to be a mom so much and was not able to conceive. That's a whole nother topic that I will go into later on. But anyways, all of that to say that during that time I had massive hemorrhaging on 2 different occasions, where I got super anemic again. And the same thing that they wanted to do before, they did this time. gave me a bunch of iron. It made me vomit. I tried to keep it down. I couldn't. I tried to eat iron-rich foods. It took me a really long time to bounce back from it. So that was my second bout with anemia. The third one happened when I was in Colorado in my first years of teaching. And I had a lot of really terrible things happen to me in Colorado, and I don't really want to go into them right now, and I don't know if I will. I might, but I might not. We'll put it in a nutshell to say I was in a really emotionally abusive relationship. I was in a really rough area of Colorado, and I was teaching for my first 3 years in a school basically filled with the children of gang members and criminals and people who lived in the housing project just down the road. It was a super rough area. It was super dangerous, and the children that I dealt with were super challenging. And so it's just a difficult time because I had a very not supportive boyfriend who was not supportive of me in any kind of way, and not financially. He was basically a leech, and I was basically super weak-minded and weak-spirited and let him take advantage of me. But during the whole time I was in Colorado, continued to have pelvic pain, continued to be debilitated by it at times, continued to have a period that never ended, and finally ended up seeing a doctor who gave me an injection called Provera. And some of you may be familiar with Depo-Provera. It was a birth control injection. It was similar, it was the same hormone, but not for birth control, but it did stop the period, and at least temporarily, and allowed me to get back on my feet from the anemia again, until I had weight loss surgery. And I did have a very traumatic event happen. And so I had the weight loss surgery, which was, you know, in essence, having your insides rearranged, and basically going from eating a lot to eating nearly nothing. And so I was struggling with malabsorption. I was struggling with vomiting all the time from the surgery. And I eventually did get a regular cycle. Whenever I had lost about 50 pounds, I started to have a regular cycle. And so that wasn't the issue anymore. It was the fact that I couldn't hold food down. And I was having malabsorption from the weight loss surgery. And so all of that combined, I had another situation with anemia where I was at school and I passed out. And whenever they called the ambulance and everything else, and I ended up in the emergency, they said that I was super anemic, and that was the reason that I passed out. Also, I had an incident with my parents in a restaurant where I think the same thing happened. And I woke up with a bunch of paramedics around me, not knowing where I was or why I was on the ground or how I even ended up where I was. At that point, they ended up giving me iron infusions. I had it, I think 3 different times I had iron infusions, and apparently that took care of it. That whole time in my life is a blur because it was so just a terrible time in my life, and I think it's honestly PTSD is just like, I'm just my mind protects me from having a clear memory of everything that happened while I was there. Needless to say, I came home, I left him, I left there, and started fresh at home. I forgot to say that while I was in Colorado at the beginning, right at the beginning of teaching in Colorado, I got mono. I had mono for several weeks before the doctor called and told me that I had mono. And there's really nothing that you can do about it. It's a virus and it has to run its course. But I don't think that my body was ever the same after I had mono. I have actually talked to many people who have fibro and other autoimmune illnesses, and a lot of them have said that illness or that chronic illness developed after having mono. So it makes me wonder if there's something in having that virus that changes the chemistry in your body to do something to you neurologically that makes your nerves fire whenever there's nothing to cause it to happen. There's not an injury, there's not anything that's causing it to happen. But I was just never the same after those two events, which is the weight loss surgery and having mono, and then the other thing that happened to me along with the really dysfunctional relationship. And I'm not trying to be evasive about what happened to me there. Let's just say it was really terrible and traumatic, and I might share it someday and I might not. I just haven't made a decision on that yet. But I wanted to tell you that something happened so that you understand that all these traumatic things happened to me while I was there. And I think the combination of those is what triggered off whatever dysfunction it is in my body that causes me to be in pain all the time. So I came home to Oklahoma. That's the next thing. I came home to Oklahoma and moved back in with my mom. My dad was living in New Mexico and working there at that time. So it was just me and my mom, and that was the only way that I figured I could get away from this relationship, because he was one of those guys that just didn't want to give up and didn't want to let me go and just continued to pursue me. It was a year, even a year later, I had people coming up and talking to me as if I was still with him, because he hadn't let any of the people in his life know, his family members, his closest friends. He had not let any of those people know that we weren't together anymore. He was convinced that he was going to be able to win me back somehow, and I knew that wasn't going to happen, but he didn't know that was going to happen. And so I really don't think I need to go any further into this because it's long and drawn out. But that is the reason why I didn't get my own place. I moved in with my mom because I knew that that would offer some protection, because he couldn't just show up at her house. He couldn't, be there. If it had been an apartment, he could have just shown up at my apartment whenever he felt like it, and he never would have left me alone. So at that point, I had gone to so many doctors. At that point, I had gone to so many doctors trying to figure out what the heck was wrong with me prior to my surgery and prior to Colorado, that at that point I had just given up that it was going to be that way. And it was just something I was going to have to live with. It didn't have a name. I just knew that there was something wrong in my body and I was in pain all the time. It was the first time I had been single in a long time, because I went from being divorced to within 6 months right into this long-term relationship that I've been talking about. And so I just kind of, rolled with it, did what I could do. But in the meantime, I was having all these symptoms. So I thought I would take this time to explain to you what the different kinds of symptoms are with fibro. I call it the joy, and facetiously call it the joy of the traveling pain, because your knee might hurt one day, it might be your tailbone the next day, it may be your spine up the back of your neck, it might be your shoulder blade, it might be your elbow, it might be your toe. You never know what you're going to get. And unfortunately, fibro pain tends to gravitate to areas that you have been injured before. Like I said, I was a rough and tumble. I was a tomboy. I was an athlete. And so in my adolescent years, I dislocated my knee. I sprained my ankle so hardcore that I was on crutches for 3 months. One of my friend's brothers pushed me. I was sitting on the edge of a really high ramp at my dad's baseball stadium, and one of my friend's brothers pushed me off, and I landed on my butt and I broke my tailbone. And so those tend to be the areas that I have the most pain, because I don't know why. I've asked my rheumatologist, and she said yes, that is there is the propensity for pain to be in previously injured areas. That kind of pain is really like just an area of your body that just hurts all the time. Like if you have a bad knee or a bad back, it's like that, but it moves around. It may be there for 3 months, it may be there for 3 minutes, but one day it may be one place, one day it may be the next. So it might be centralized to one area. I'm trying to look at all the different things. I talked about the injuries. Body-wide pain or widespread pain, meaning that there are a lot of times where everything hurts. And people laugh at me when I say this, but I'm totally serious. Sometimes my skin hurts. I have to tell my students, I just always say, be gentle with me, because kids have the tendency to do a running tackle at you with a hug. And obviously I don't want to reject that, but I'm always like, be gentle with me. Because sometimes, you know, the pain is so intense that if somebody comes and slams their body into you, it's very painful. Especially when there's a body-wide, you know, ache. And the best way for me to describe the body-wide ache is how most people feel when they have the flu. Like when you have the chills and you have a fever and your whole body hurts. It's like a dull ache over your entire body. That's the best way for me to describe it in a way that somebody could relate to or understand, or, you know, make a comparison with. I'm making a crazy eyebrow because I'm talking. I'm going to go off camera, finish my eyebrows, and then come back and I'll talk to you about the rest of the symptoms. All right, I think they're still crazy, but they're better than they would have been if I would have kept on talking. Okay, so body-wide pain, flu-like symptoms, pain concentrated in previously injured areas, really sensitive spots on your body. Like I have one on my elbow, I have one on the inside of my knee. They're called pressure points or trigger points. I have one in between my shoulder blades right above my hips that if somebody were to put any pressure on it, it would literally make me come out of my skin. I've had people come up behind me and grab onto my shoulders like they're going to massage my shoulders, and like I literally scream. There are places on my body that are so sensitive to touch and they are so painful that people who know me don't do that to me. People who don't know me, obviously they don't do it on purpose to hurt me. It wouldn't hurt any ordinary person, but it really hurts me. Like I said, sore skin. There's a couple things that people don't understand about fibromyalgia, and it was something that I didn't even know was part of fibromyalgia until I started doing a lot of research, and that is sensory overload and chronic fatigue. Chronic fatigue, I always just kind of attributed it to the fact that if you are steadily coping with severe pain, obviously there's going to be some kind of, you know, wearing out process. You're going to be tired from enduring pain, from coping with pain. And, you know, I'm not going to go far into the medicinal part of it at this point because I'm going to make a whole different video about pain management. But I was not on any medicine at this time. I had not seen a rheumatologist yet. I had not seen a medical doctor who had offered any kind of medicinal help at that point. I was just dealing with it. But chronic fatigue, sensory overload, meaning a lot of times they talk about sensory overload with autistic kids, like really loud noises or repetitive noises or startling noises. We're super sensitive. So like if somebody, if there's a sound like a tap, like I'm going to tap my fingernail on my vanity, if there's that sound, to you that sounds like a light tapping, to me that sounds like, and so I'm super sensitive to the sound of repetitive noises. Like for instance, my husband will be scratching on the chair trying to get or patting on the chair to get my cat to come up there, and I will just say, stop it. Like it gives me anxiety. It also gives me like that really uncomfortable chill up the spine kind of feeling. I get sensory overloaded really easily, and I get very irritated and agitated from it, which makes my profession not a good choice. Because in a room full of kids, all you're hearing is noise. All you're hearing is noises and tapping and clicking and slurping and hiccuping. all the things, and it's nonstop. And so I find myself really having to take a lunch hour on my own and sit in the dark without light, without sound, and just diffuse from it so that I can make it through the rest of my day. And by the time I get home, I'm super tired just from coping with all of it. The pain, the physical aspect of being on my feet all day, the constant sensory overload that I experience for 8 hours, along with the chronic fatigue. So all of those things combined, you can see that I spend 99% of my life fully exhausted. And whenever I share a day in the life with you, which I'm going to intentionally choose a day where I'm really not feeling well so that you can see what a day in the life looks like. But all of those things are involved. So when people hear fibromyalgia, they don't understand that there are so many facets to it, and it's so different for each person. One person may have these kind of symptoms and another one won't, or there will be a different combination of them, or it will vary from time to time. But most people that I have talked to that have fibromyalgia do have these kinds of symptoms, and some of them we've talked about that they weren't aware were part of it either until we discussed it. It's like, do you have this happen? Do you have this happen? It's very helpful to have somebody who has the same illness as you or a similar autoimmune situation to talk to, because it helps you, makes you feel like you're not so abnormal and that somebody actually really does understand and relates to what you're going through. I finally saw a doctor. I go to an Indian health clinic. I went into, I had an appointment with the doctor, and then because I was like at my wit's end and feeling like I was just absolutely could not deal with the pain anymore. And I went in to what I thought was my doctor's appointment. I even had a piece of paper that had the doctor's appointment written on it. And they didn't have me scheduled. They didn't have me down on the schedule. And at that point, I was at a breaking point. And I'm not a person who likes to show emotion in front of other people, especially strangers. But I just broke down. And I was just like, I have to see somebody today. Like, I have to have some relief from this pain. I cannot do this another day. Super depressed from it, super anxious, and just so in such bad pain that I just broke down in front of this lady. And she was a nurse practitioner, and she said, Sherry, I have had a lot of success with this particular combination of medicine, and it was tramadol, which is Ultram, which is kind of it. At the time, it was not considered a narcotic. It is considered a narcotic now. It is an opioid, which people, are on full tilt over the opioid because people are, getting addicted to opioids, and and that's a whole nother story for the pain management part of this. But, and this may end up being an hour after all. You saw it coming, didn't you? But, it was a combination of that and another med called nortriptyline, which is an antidepressant that was supposed to basically affect the same area of the brain that controls nerve impulses, and it was basically supposed to numb out nerve impulses so that it wouldn't be a constant nerve pain. Another way that I describe the pain that I have sometimes is like if you have a toothache, that severe intense nerve pain that you have when you have like a need for a root canal, or you've got a broken area and your nerve is exposed. Most people have experienced that at least once in their life. It's like having that body wide. So I'm trying to explain it to you in a way where you can understand how gnawing this kind of pain is. And she also prescribed pregabalin, which is Lyrica. So I was on Lyrica, tramadol, and nortriptyline. And it was the first time in 20 years that I felt any kind of relief, and I actually got to live my life for a little while, and that was super encouraging until they started messing with me. The opioid crisis caused a big time problem where I get my health care, which is the Indian health system in Oklahoma, because I'm Native American, and it's provided, healthcare is provided to us. Basically, they pay for anything beyond my insurance from work. And so they provide my prescriptions. Well, they decided they were just going to stop prescribing opioids altogether. They also decided they didn't want to pay the high cost for Lyrica. So through the last 5 or 6 years, I have had doctors who would be willing to prescribe it, doctors who were not. Sometimes the pharmacy carried it, sometimes they did not. I tried to go off of the Lyrica and went right back to the severe pain that I couldn't live with. I've gone back and forth with all this in so many ways, and I've had so many hassles and so many issues with doctors and medicines. I've been treated like I'm a junkie. I've been treated like I'm a drug seeker. I have always said that I would never take narcotic pain medicine because I work with children. I would never take anything that would alter me or impair me, and what I take does not in any shape or form impair me. I would never do anything that would cause my reaction time to be shorter, that would cause my attention to be altered, because I work with children and I'm responsible for their safety. And so I've never been that person that was ever willing to live on pain medicine. And tramadol is very weak, very light. It doesn't take the pain away, it takes the edge off. And so I'm very thankful for it. I'm thankful to even have it right now. And I'll go into that when I go into the pain management part of this. But at the moment, they've taken me off of almost everything except for the Lyrica and the tramadol. Those are the only 2 medicines that I take for fibro. Is it ideal? Does it take the pain away? Not even slightly. I would say 20% relief, which for me, the fact that I'm not sitting here gritting my teeth because I can't bear it, the fact that it takes that away I'm so thankful for that. I'm not griping about that at all. I could not have that amount of relief, and I could be having to spend my whole life in my bed, and I can work and I can get up and I can have my YouTube channel and I can take care of my family, and I can still have a tiny bit of a social life. And so I'm not complaining at all. But all of that to say, I just wanted people to have a better understanding of this, and I wanted, not just for my sake, not just for the fact that I need people to understand me and my situation, but also because there are people who are mistreated because people are, and doctors and people are saying, oh, always an excuse. Oh, it's all in her head. Oh, she's not, there's something wrong with her mentally, that she's not really experiencing this. Like, there's so many people who won't validate that this is a real thing. I will say that I think that fibromyalgia has become a dumping, like a trash can diagnosis for people who they can't explain why they're in pain. There's not a test that they can take that shows it. There's not a something that's visible on the outside of the body that shows it. When you have an invisible illness, it's hard for people to understand because you look okay on the outside. And I'm making up myself, which I have completely stopped. I'm making up myself. I can cover up the black under eyes. I can cover up a lot of what makes me look sick. The vitamin deficiencies, all the things that, I didn't even get into the vitamin deficiencies. My weight loss surgery and my fibromyalgia have in combination caused me to have potassium deficiencies, vitamin D deficiencies, vitamin B12 deficiencies. Now I'm super low on iron and anemic again. That's why I have been so sick for the last month and a half. I've had no energy. I had one episode where I almost passed out, just severely anemic again. I also have a low white blood cell count, which they're concerned about, and I'm going to see a hematologist about that. I'm going to go into more of this when I do the segment about the emotional, mental, spiritual effect of chronic illness on somebody, because that's kind of where I'm at, and that's where I've been for the last month and a half, is just like trying to keep my head above water, having no energy, having pain, having such terrible fatigue where I felt like I had to sleep all the time, having no stamina to do all the things that I ordinarily do. Even small little tasks like vacuuming my living room makes me feel like I need a nap. and not, you know, right now is the perfect time if I'm going to be anemic and sick and tired. Right now is the perfect time because I'm not having to work. But there's the concern in my heart already about what am I going to do when I do have to get up at 4:30? What am I going to do when I do have to spend 8 hours with very stressful situations with children? And what am I going to do then if I'm not back on my feet with the anemia? The white blood cell thing is concerning. She's like, sometimes that's an indication of leukemia. Sometimes that's an indication of lymphoma. Maybe it's the beginnings of lupus. Maybe, this is my rheumatologist, maybe it is just your autoimmune condition. Maybe it's a combination of the autoimmune and your weight loss surgery and malabsorption issues. So there's like all these elements that come into play here. And so, yeah. I didn't even talk about the diagnosis. A medical doctor, Dr. Sanders, diagnosed me, but he was also one of the ones that was super instrumental in taking away the medicine that helps me and treating me very unfairly, and basically got in my face one day and told me that I was there seeking drugs, and he was taking me off of all of it cold turkey. And I asked him if there was something wrong with me taking this, then how come have you why have you continued to renew my subscriptions for the last 3 years? And he's like, why did you ask for them? Oh my gosh, you guys, I have had some situations that were like that one lit a fire in Miss Thang, and that one hurt my feelings, and that one made me just want to give up. I'm not even gonna lie. That having a doctor get in my face and treat me like I was a junkie and a drug seeker when he obviously didn't even know me, that was a hard one for me to swallow. Later I went, thank God, they got a rheumatologist that was accessible at the clinic that I go to, and that's Dr. Gaddy. And she has been the biggest blessing that I've ever had, because she cares about me. She listens to me. She cares about how I feel. She pays close attention to my labs and what's going on with me, and she responds, and she lets me know what's going on, and she lets me know what potentially could be the cause. And when there's a concern, she will refer me out to a specialist and make sure that things get checked. And, you know, like for instance now, because of my anemia and the low white blood cell count, she, like I said, she's sending me to a hematologist, but she's also having a ultrasound done next week because to check and make sure I don't have any kind of spleen bleed. So there's all kinds of things that this could be, and it's like so exhausting just going through all these tests to find out. Like, part of me wants to curl up in a ball in my bed and say, no, I'm not going to do this. But I'm also that undying spirit who won't give up on life and refuses to let it beat me, and I'm not going to let it beat me. So anyways, Dr. Gaddy, tiny little Italian lady, beautiful. I mean, literally like 4 foot nothing with some heels on. And she cares about me, and she makes sure that I understand my blood work. She makes sure that I understand everything, and she listens to me. And by the next day when I get done, if she doesn't have all my labs back, or there's some information that she wasn't able to give me, because she's at the clinic once every other week for 1 day, she sends me a letter. It gives me all the details. And if something's not right, she sends me for more tests, or she does a blood draw or something. In the least, she's trying to help me, and in the least, she has a heart for me, and she understands, and she doesn't treat me the way that other doctors have treated me, like I'm nuts or like I'm a drug seeker or any of those things. She's been nothing but respectful and loving and caring to me, and I'm so thankful for her. So very thankful for her. She was the one that, just the fact that she came into my life, I felt like I could keep on fighting and keep on trying to figure out what's going on with my body and what is the best way to deal with it and approach it. So I know this is an hour already. So I think I'm going to go ahead and kind of close it up here, even though my face isn't done. But at least I was doing a little something while I was getting ready talking to you. But Anyways, I will, like I said, I'll come back another time and talk to you about pain management and my experience with that, and the various different combinations of things that I have tried and the effect on me. I will also have an entire video about the emotional, mental, and spiritual impact of having a chronic illness. It's difficult, and you have to be a trooper and a flippin' warrior to make it through this kind of situation. And I'm not tooting my own horn or patting myself on the back. I'm saying that because I want people who are going through this to know that I recognize the courage, and I recognize the endurance and the perseverance and just the, flipping badassness. Badassness. I'm saying a cuss word, but there's no other way to describe that. Badassness that it takes to live with this and stay upright and still, keep walking and keep fighting every day. I honor those people because I know how difficult it is. So, yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Lots of tests coming up, and I'll let you guys know how that goes. But I will be back soon with a day in the life. Like I said, I'm going to wait until there's a bad day. I'm not hoping that that's anytime soon, but I'm going to wait to film that until there's a bad day. I did not mention, and I need to say this, that my condition is very sensitive to weather changes. So all it's going to take for me to have a day to film the day in the life is for a storm to come in or for a cold front to move in. I'm like a meteorologist. My body's a meteorologist. Like, I can say it's going to rain today, and people say, oh no, it's not going to rain. I'm like, oh yes it is. And it's so funny because just like the kind of pain that I feel and the areas that I feel it and the way that it feels in my body, I can tell when it's weather related. I can tell whenever it is rainy weather related and humidity and barometric pressure changes, and I can tell when it's cold front weather changes that are coming. And people laugh at me because they're like, you said it was going to rain, and I told you it wasn't going to rain, and it rained. And I was like, I know. That's because my body tells me almost every time. And if it doesn't, I feel like I got blessed that day and I didn't have to endure it. I got away with it. Like, I feel like I got away with it. And that makes me happy. Sometimes I'm just like, ha! It's raining and I didn't even know it was coming. But there are other days when I'm like, it's raining. It's gonna rain. I don't know when. It may not even be nearby us, but somewhere in this state it is raining. So, whenever there's the next rainy day or the next weather change, cold front that comes through, then I will film the day in the life for you. And I basically will just kind of show you what it's like for me, from getting out of bed and what I have to do to get my body moving to, the emotional, mental aspect of like, how am I feeling in my heart and my spirit and my soul? How am I surviving in that respect? There's a lot. And so I'm going to stop there. This is heavy, this is a big time burden and something that I wish away every day, and I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. And like I said, I'm not trying to get sympathy or pity, because I'm still here, I'm still fighting, I'm still upright, I'm still doing all the things that I have to do to live this life and try really hard to find happiness and joy in it, even despite the pain and even despite all the problems that come along with this. I'm still here and I'm still fighting. So don't feel sorry for me, is what I'm saying, because I'm an overcomer. That is for dang sure. So thank you so much for hanging out with me. I'm going to finish up my face and film some other videos. But like I said, in the near future, a day in the life, and in the near future, an emotional, mental, spiritual, emotional impact kind of discussion. Before I go, please ask me any questions that you might have about my condition or anything that I might go through. If you have some questions based on, like, could this be something that my kid is going through? Could this be this is what's wrong with my mom, or any kind of guidance that I can give you as to how to maybe help those folks get some help. I'm not an expert. I can just tell you what has worked for me as far as medicines are concerned. Some kind of physical therapy kind of things have helped in the past. All those things. If you have any questions or comments, just please put them in the comment section. That was weird. Please. Please put them in the comment section, and we'll have a discussion about it if you'd like to. I would like to just hear your opinion on what I've told you today, and if my little bits and pieces of this on my beauty channel have come through to help you understand it at all, or is everything that I'm saying to you kind of a surprise right now and you had no idea. I'm just really curious, because sometimes people who have chronic illness try so hard for normalcy that they kind of hide what they're going through all the time, to the point where people don't even really know that's what's happening with them. They want to appear normal. They want to feel normal. They don't want a bunch of extra attention drawn to them, and so they try really hard to be undetectable when it comes to how they're feeling. So, just curious. All right, guys, thank you. If you made it to the end of this, thank you so much for hanging out with me and hearing me out and being interested in this part of my life that has everything to do with who I am and how I live my life on a day-to-day basis. But I'm going to go for now. Thank you so much again for being here. I feel like I have repeated the same thing 16 times. So I'm just going to say, until the next 2 parts of this video series, take care and God bless. Bye, guys. Then my experience with this fly, very impersonal. There is a fly that needs to get the heck out of my room. I need Boo Bear the Ninja Fly Slayer. This fly, God bless it.